Welcome everyone. I think we can start. Before we take up the reading today, let's take a moment of silence and invoke Mother's and Aurobindo presence. So today we have to start from here. Last time we had taken up living fearlessly. Then today we start with the subconscient aspect in healing. So yeah, if anyone who wants to read can take up this first
Yeah,
page. Yes.
the subconscient, Sri Aurobindo. In our yoga, we mean by the subconscient that quite submerged part of our being in which there is no vacantly conscious and coherent thought, will, or feeling, or organized reaction, but which yet receives obscurely the impressions of all things and stores them in itself, and from it to all sorts of stimuli of persistent habitual movements, crudely repeated or disguised in strange forms, can surge up into dream or into waking nature. It is largely responsible for our illnesses, chronic or repeated illnesses. Illnesses are indeed mainly due to subconscient and its obstinate memory and habit of repetition of whatever has impressed itself upon the body consciousness. But this subconscient must be clearly distinguished from the subliminal parts of our being, such as the inner or subtle physical consciousness, the inner vital or inner mental, for these are not at all obscure or incoherent or ill organized, but only veiled from our surface consciousness. Our surface constantly receives something, inner touches, communications, or influences from these sources, but does not know for the most part whence they come.
Yeah. Maybe you can take this up also.
Yes, ma'am. The subconscient influences the body because all in the body has developed out of the subconscient, and all in itself still is only half conscious, and much of its action can be called subconscious. It is therefore much more easily influenced by the subconscious than by the conscious mind and conscious will, or even the vital mind and vital will accept in those things in which a conscious mental or vital control has been established and the subconscious itself has accepted it. If it were not so, man's control of his actions and physical states would be complete. There would be no illness, or if there were, it would be immediately cured by mental action. But it is not so. For that reason, the higher consciousness has to be brought down, the body and the subconscient enlightened by it, and accustomed to it to obey its control. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I think this is extremely important part that we have just read. And this also, I think we touched upon in the other session, psychic education also, this part, what is subliminal and what is subconscious. Because oftentimes there is a confusion between subconscious and subliminal. So usually subliminal is referring to the higher part in us, the higher one which has light, but we are not aware of that light. Usually that higher part in us, the higher self in us, which is veiled from our conscious sight, but is influencing us from time to time. There Sri Aurobindo uses the word subliminal, but where we are ruled by some old patterns, but we don't know that we are ruled by them, there we are using subconscious. So we may have some patterns coming from our animal behavior, when we were animals, and we are blinded to those patterns. We are not looking at them, we are not conscious of them, but we are ruled by them. So they will be called subconscious. Like maybe when I was a little child, then some pattern I developed to protect myself, and that pattern I'm still following, but I don't know that I am following it. The pattern is ruling me and it dictates my behavior with other people, but I am unaware of that. So there also we call it there we call it subconscious. That is not subliminal. So Sri Aurobindo in this paragraph, I think, really makes it clear for us, because often there is a lot of confusion. So this subconscious is that part. What is inconscient then? Inconscient is further deeper than subconscient. So inconscient is, imagine that there is no light at all, complete darkness. That we can call inconscient. But as a little bit of light or movement begins to come, some movement begins to happen, then we call it, now we can call it subconscient. But when it was happening, it was not called as subconscient. It is just because it evolves out of that inconscient, that something that appears very dead, as if it has no life, it has no consciousness. Out of that, the aspects that come first, and now we have kind of evolved further, we have an active consciousness. So those which are earlier patterns coming out of इनकॉन्शियस में सबसे पहले इनकॉन्शियंट में क्या हो रहा है, you have a movement, so there is a pattern, there is a repetition of a movement. Now we can call that subconscious, because it is a pattern, it is running by itself. It's like a machine, autopilot mode में है वो machine. So all these patterns that we have, they are called subconscious. The subconscious has come out of inconscient. वो और भी ज़्यादा deeper darkness, and where you can't see any consciousness. It's not palpable. It's like as if something is just inert and dead. So these patterns that we have from this life, from earlier lifetimes, from our childhood, things that happened with us, and we developed some kind of thinking patterns, feeling patterns, and even right now we are behaving in such way, like as if we are a child. But I'm not aware of those patterns ruling me. So because it is not in my waking consciousness, that is why we call it subconscious. Like I am not aware of it. But the moment we begin to become aware of those patterns, then we can develop a mastery over them. That is what we say, when we talk about changing our old patterns which are not benefiting anymore and taking us down into cultivating into some good things, using that time into some something higher, something lofty. So we change those neural patterns which are actually stuck in the brain also, because the brain is also used to behaving in such a way. Like for example, if I have claustrophobia, maybe something happened in this life or earlier lifetimes where I'm just like very uneasy when I am in four walls and which are very constricted. But when I begin to look at it, why do I behave this way? What are these walls doing to me? They are doing nothing. So when we become conscious of it, when we begin to embrace it and accept it and transmute it, then it is not subconscient anymore. It has come to my waking consciousness, and then you can have a little kind of mastery over it and change it also. But usually what happens is that usually we are just, because we are mostly living a life which is unconscious life, we are not aware that we are ruled by these patterns, and they just go on and on and on, these patterns. I think I'm living a life which is a conscious life, but actually I'm just ruled by my old patterns. I don't know them, that I'm ruled by them. That is why mother says, think, why do you think like that? Why do you feel like that? Why do you behave like that? So we must ask these questions to ourselves, and that is how slowly all those patterns are, they kind of rise up to conscious, and then we can clear and transmute. And subliminal will be that part which is our higher part, like moments of bravery. Something happens and you feel like taking a stand, like I should take a stand for this, so that is those higher lofty things, from where also we get impacts. We get kind of, it impinges on us from within. कुछ कहता है हमको कि ये क्या किया तूने, बी जेनरस, बी काइंड, कुछ हमको पोक करता है. So that aspect which expands us, which takes us to our higher self, makes us more expansive, wide, vast, lifts us up. Those influences are coming from subliminal, inner being, or yeah. So that is the, and again, why the word sub is used, because it is not, I'm not aware of it. It is away from my waking consciousness. That's why we use the word sub. So subconscious and subliminal are two things which are used in a different kind of, the terminology is different and the things are also different. So here in this one, Aurobindo is clarifying for us. There's mostly our diseases are coming because of those, or recurring because of those subconscious patterns. Those patterns which I am repeating, but I'm not aware of them. And that is why, many a times we are not sure, we are not convinced that we can master our illness. Why? Because we don't know what am I ruled by. So because there's so much which is behind the waking consciousness, and that is ruling. So in our yoga, we mean by the subconscious that quiet submerged part of our being, in which there is no wakingly conscious and coherent thought, will or feeling, or organized reaction, but which yet receives obscurely the impressions of all things and stores them up in itself, and from it too all sorts of stimuli of persistent habitual movements. That is why it's very good to look at our habits, from time to time, to look at our habits. Why am I doing this? Is it serving the habit that I have? Is it serving me? And what happens is that after we have formed a habit, it actually goes in a autopilot mode. So we become unconscious about it, but it's like the autopilot is going on, and it's ruling me. And I don't know when I am formed the habit. Maybe the habit was formed in a previous life, or maybe in the childhood, I don't know. But it is, from that time it is on autopilot mode. तो हैबिट की यही खास बात है, स्टार्टिंग में आपको एफर्ट करना पड़ता है, लेकिन बाद में वो ऑटो पायलट में चली जाती है. सो दैट इज वाई वी कैन ऑल्सो कल्टिवेट गुड हैबिट्स when we become conscious now of our bad habits, that which are not serving us well, which may have served in the beginning. But then we can cultivate good habits. In the beginning, we have to put effort, put effort, put effort. But once we become habitual to it, that is the thing about habit. It just goes on autopilot. Then it becomes like a new norm. Hmm? So he says that this is what is responsible for persistent habitual movements. Like हमको ब्रश करना होता है, हमको कुछ नहीं सोचना पड़ता ब्रश करने के बारे में. हमको पता है कहाँ जाना है, कहाँ से उठाना है, किच 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 कहाँ कहाँ करना है. इट्स लाइक अ हैबिट. क्यों? क्योंकि करते आ रहे हैं. नहाना, धोना, आंखें साफ करना, वॉट एवर डेली थिंग्स, कपड़े पहनना, उसमें हमको सोचना नहीं पड़ता. देन यू डोंट हैव टू बिकम कॉन्शियस अबाउट इट और पुट एफर्ट. कपड़े पहन रहे होते हैं तो मोस्टली हम क्या करते हैं, हम पैंट ऊपर नहीं चढ़ाते हैं, पैंट नीचे ही पहनते हैं. उसमें सोचना ही नहीं पड़ रहा आपको ना, वो एज इफ की ऑटो पायलट में जा चुका है वो सारा काम. So persistent habitual movements, crudely repeated and or disguised in strange forms, can surge up into dream or into waking nature. So again, they time to time surge up. They come either they show up in our dreams or they show up like we become conscious of it. These habits. This it is largely responsible for our illnesses. Chronic or repeated illnesses are indeed mainly due to the subconscient and its obstinate memory. कुछ है जो पकड़ के बैठ गए हम, है ना. कुछ है जो बस क्वेश्चन ही नहीं किया कभी, बस उसको पकड़ के बैठ गए कि दुनिया ऐसी है तो दुनिया ऐसी है. या अगर फॉर एग्जाम्पल किसी को लगता है कि इस सिटी या कंट्री में जाके मेरे को एस्थमा होता है, तो वो बस उसने क्वेश्चन ही नहीं किया कभी, उसको बस दिमाग में बिठा लिया, एक बार उसको भूल गया, उसको बिठा के. Obstinate memory, it's like a very ziddy thing that has got stuck somewhere, कि मेरे को यहाँ मैं आती हूँ ना तो मेरे को हमेशा एस्थमा होता ही होता है, और उसमें हम मजे भी लेते हैं. Earlier we were reading that mother was saying that when we begin to enjoy this, then of course we can never get rid of it. कि मेरे को ना यहाँ पे मैं जब भी आती हूँ ना, मेरा ना पेट खराब होता है और मजे आ रहे हैं हमको ये बोलने में. सो तब हमको उससे राहत नहीं मिलती, क्योंकि कुछ चाहता ही नहीं है हम अपने अंदर, उसको we don't want to get rid of it. So chronic or repeated illnesses are indeed mainly due to the subconscient and its obstinate memory and habit of repetition. So that is why being aware, being conscious, being mindful of what we are thinking, what we are feeling, why we are doing that is so important, because it has a habit of repetition. Why am I repeating these things in my head? What good are they doing to me? Why am I feeling the same way again and again about me, other person, or my health, or whatever? Why? Can I change that? Habit of repetition of whatever has impressed itself upon the body consciousness. So slowly, after enough repetition, it becomes a part of the body consciousness. It kind of goes down, becomes a part of it. So then we have to pull it out of that and transmute it there. The body has to now change in that consciousness. Yes, Sharda ji?
Yeah, Monica, can we, is it possible for us to find out why we are doing by questioning us? Is it possible?
I feel at times it is possible.
Okay.
At times it is possible because we can locate the cause within this life.
Okay.
At times people do past life regression to locate if something is really, really, really bothering them.
Mm-hmm.
And no other thing is helping. So people take the help of all these therapists who have, the capacity of taking us into previous lives and resolving our issues there. Because इस जन्म में आपको वो नहीं दिख रहा है ना, कि कहाँ है वो, उसका end कहाँ पे. At times one may not be able to trace it at all. But then the other thing helps. See, subconscient is something which is ruling me, which is making me narrowing and constricted and limited. But there is also a higher aspect in me, which is the subliminal, which is my higher self, my deeper, my more good self, right? Wiser self. So when we expand our life in such a way that we give importance to these wider aspects of our life, so maybe I'm dealing with jealousy. So if I keep on continuing focus on jealousy, oh, why is it there? Where is it coming from? Then it's a never-ending process. I would be stuck. But what I can do is I can apply an antidote to it, which is generosity. So you expand that generous aspect of you, feeling of oneness, feeling of generosity. उसको expand करते हैं ना जब उसमें हम when we spend some time and give time in our life. So फिर धीरे 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 that aspect becomes slowly, it has less grip over us. But we may not really know what is coming from where, because it is not necessary that we may be able to trace where is it coming from. But at times one is able to trace also. So we usually, when we have narrowing aspects in our being, we don't mostly focus on narrowing aspect. अब जैसे मान लो एक शैतान बच्चा है, some naughty child. If all the time उस शैतान बच्चे को तुम उसकी गलतियां ही बताते रहोगे, वो तुम्हारी बात सुनना ही बंद कर देगा. ये अक्सर होता है हमारे साथ. तो हम क्या करते हैं, क्या कोशिश करते हैं, हम उस बच्चे की जो अच्छी चीजें हैं उसकी तरफ उसका ध्यान करते हैं कि अच्छा, मान लो उस बच्चे को कुकिंग अच्छी लगती है. So we put his energies into, चल आजा हम ये बनाते हैं, let's bake together, let's cook together. So slowly that little kid would forget the naughty aspects or give it less time at least. So we develop the beautiful qualities so that the little darknesses and shadows which everyone has, they are kind of left behind.
Achha.
Because if we keep focusing on darkness and shadows and imperfections and weaknesses, there is no end to it. Everybody has that, and they're never ending in nature. Little obscurities everywhere. But everyone has light also. This subliminal part that we were talking of, the goodness in us. So whenever we focus on the light aspect, increase the light, then see, for example, we talk about a room which is full of darkness. Now we don't fight darkness. What do? We light up a diya inside.
Yeah.
We don't try to fight with darkness. And the moment even a little bit of diya is there inside, the darkness is not there. No matter how dense was the darkness.
Beautiful.
We focus on the brighter aspects if we want to let go of the little obscurity, which we know are there. Goodness, that's why these 12 qualities, for example, the outer petals of mother's symbol, so we can reflect over them or think over them. Generosity, sincerity, perseverance, goodness, gratitude, humility, courage. So all these, and everyone has these qualities, but it's just that matter of cultivation, that we don't focus on them and rather keep focusing on the darkness and the weakness and imperfection. Yeah.
Thank you, Monica.
Yeah, anything more over here? Yeah, okay. So, but this subconscient must be clearly distinguished from the subliminal parts of our being, such as the inner or subtle physical consciousness. The inner vital or inner mental. For these are not at all obscure or incoherent or ill organized, but only veiled from our surface consciousness. So that is the difference. Something very beautiful, full of light, very bright, full of wisdom, knowledge and everything, but we are not aware of it. And it is giving us impacts from time to time. Whenever we have impulses of generosity, impulses of goodness, kindness, compassion, when we step back from our desires, where are these impingings coming from? They are coming from that part which is we are not able to see, but it is in action. It impresses upon us its influence. our surface constantly receives something, inner touches, communications, or influences from these sources, but does not know for the most part whence they come. So हमें नहीं पता लगता ये कहाँ से आ रहे हैं, मुझे इतनी अच्छा विचार, शुद्ध विचार कहाँ से आया, हमें नहीं पता, बट वो आया। और ये हम सबके साथ होता है। So to listen to that goodness when it comes is a way to expand it further. Whenever we have these glimpses, little goodness glimpses and good deeds or purity or sacrifice or self-giving or surrender or self-forgetfulness, whenever these things are there, if we can become conscious and let it expand in our being. The subconscient influences the body because all in the body has developed out of the subconscient. So this was what earlier Priya was asking. So it has evolved out of the inconscient, and the body has come out of that subconscient. The body has developed out of the subconscient. So in rock, nothing moves. But when there is a movement, then we kind of call it an organism. Then in that organism, there are patterns. There are pattern of digestion or pattern of assimilation or how it eats the food. These are like movements which are happening. And slowly, as it grows in consciousness, these patterns they kind of go down in the subconscious. पीछे रह जाते हैं. Impressions are there. So the body is coming out of that subconscious, and that is why it keeps influencing the body. And all in itself still is only half conscious. And much of its action can be called subconscious. अब हमें we have no idea how all the organs of assimilation and respiration and digestion, how are they working? हम चला रहे हैं उनको? कौन चला रहा है उनको? सारे के सारे हमारे जो पूरे के पूरे organs हैं अपने आप काम करे जा रहे हैं, repetition. Intelligence and repetition is there. It is therefore much more easily influenced by the subconscious than by conscious mind. That is why in diseases affirmations help a lot, I feel. जब हम affirm करते हैं, कोई भी चीज लिख रहे हैं, उसको repeat कर रहे हैं mind में, anything that we are affirming in the body, it goes down in that body consciousness and is able to change because the body is ruled by that subconscious. So it is therefore much more easily influenced by the subconscious than by conscious mind and conscious will, or even the vital mind and vital will, except in those things in which a conscious mental or vital control has been established and the subconscious itself has accepted it. So after a long time of affirming, consciously trying to master my body and master my feelings and thoughts, then it sinks down in the subconscious also. So the subconscious accepts it as a part of it. And this is what I was sharing once, that our dreams change. Earlier we may be fearful in our dreams, but now you have a dream in which you are very courageous. So it means something has worked of those affirmations which you used to affirm, and it has gone deep down, because in dreams you can't fool yourself. That's the beautiful thing. In dreams we can't fool ourselves. अगर हम किसी के बारे में गलत विचार रखते हैं, कुछ रखते हैं, तो हम ऊपर से उस बंदे को कुछ भी दिखा दें, बट ड्रीम में वो उसके लिए वैसा ही एटीट्यूड रहेगा. So it's very interesting that if we want to check ourselves, our patterns, we can check, be conscious of our dreams, and then it gives us a reflection. So that is why in our diseases, affirmations help a lot. And if we can be conscious of these affirmations and affirm and consciously change all the negative patterns that we are carrying, then it is accepted by the subconscious also, he says. And then body begins to change. And then he says, if this influence was not there from the subconscious, he says, if it were not so, man's control of his actions and physical states would be complete. है ना, कि सोचा और हो गया, बट हम सोचते हैं और होता नहीं है. तो ये है क्योंकि पीछे से बहुत चीजें हैं जो हमें रूल कर रही हैं. हाँ, तो कॉन्शियसली हम सोच रहे हैं, बट एक्शन में उसको डिसिप्लिन में आने में बहुत टाइम लग जाता है। क्यों? क्योंकि हमको लग रहा है अरे सोच तो रहे हैं, कॉन्शियसली तो आई एम गिविंग इट टाइम, बट वो कितने पैटर्न्स आपको पीछे से रूल कर रहे हैं उसका कोई आइडिया ही नहीं है हमको। So he says that if it were not so, if subconscient was not ruling us, man's control of his actions and physical states would be complete. There would be no illness, or if there were, it would be immediately cured by mental action. कि सोचा और करेक्ट हो गया, कुछ बीच में कोई पर्दा नहीं है, कोई झिल्ली नहीं है बीच में। बट ऐसा नहीं होता है हमारे साथ, हमको टाइम लगता है, because there are deep rooted patterns which have to be transformed. But it is not so. For that reason, the higher consciousness has to be brought. So this is what we were talking of, that if we continue to focus on darkness and the negativities, then of course there is no end to it. So we bring in the higher consciousness. We rely, for example, on the divine, that I know mother is taking care of me and I am well. All my body is full of light, full of divine consciousness. So we are bringing that higher aspect, higher consciousness. So for that reason, the higher consciousness has to be brought down. So not only these affirmations, but it has to happen like a descent. It has to be brought down. The body and the subconscient enlightened by it. So each part of the being becomes open to receive it. No part of the being wants to resist कि नहीं चाहिए, अब चाहिए. And accustomed to obey its control. So this is how he shares that we can change things in the subconscient also, by which so far we are ruled. And it is in darkness and we are not conscious of it. So it remains in darkness, perpetual darkness. Yeah, anything here? Anyone?
Yeah, just an example, a very small example. My mother always had this dust allergy. Little bit dust in the in the house, and she'll get an allergy. And when जब त्योहार आते थे ना, मतलब जब festivals and all, then I would tell her that try to wear a mask because you have dust allergy. So this time I was in India, I I saw that again she's cleaning, and for Diwali also she was like cleaning the entire house. And this time she didn't wear any mask. And I said, actually, I shouldn't have said this, but I still said, why don't you wear a mask? Because you have dust allergy. And now, because she has something very important to attend to other than just the festival in house, she said, I don't think I'll have any problem. And she didn't. And this time the dust was even more. And how she was able to do it, like, by reading this, at least I'm trying able to understand a little bit. But it's just amazing, like so many. I've seen her this dust allergy for 20, for as long as I remember, and now, like all of a sudden, she doesn't have it. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. Anything more? Anyone? I think this is very helpful because subconscious relies on habit of repetition. So we can be conscious of what we are repeating to ourselves within. We are all the time repeating something or the other in our heads. And if we can become conscious of it and we can transform it into something higher, if it repetition has to be there, can it be a higher repetition, a loftier repetition, something which brings down light in our consciousness? So through that power of repetition, we can also uh, change very old and obstinate habits which are not helpful. And Mother also says that we are always surrounded of the things that we think of. So if we become conscious of this habit of repetition and we see that, oh, what am I thinking of all the time? And if we consciously change it, consciously work upon it, then we can always carry our nice atmosphere wherever we go, rather than carrying a sad atmosphere. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you were pausing when I unmuted. So, while you were talking, while you were reflecting, it appears that then this whole, the whole process of when we say one is sadhak, like when one has to sadhu something, this whole thing, the first thing they say is about increasing awareness and alertness of the being, right? Like be conscious, like don't be ruled, see what is ruling you, kind. So then this all appears to be that is how we start opening small windows to the subconscious, because right now, as a habit, I'm just following patterns, right? And then we are encouraged to start being alert, aware कि क्यों कर रहे हो, क्यों बैठ रहे हो, क्यों सोच रहे हो. So the windows are opening so that there can be light in the subconscious. And then these activities like prayer, aspiration, these are like calling the divine, right? Like, okay, even, it's like, say, if I have a habit and I'm not able to get over it. Like, in the Vibhishan story, that he's eating the animal and yet he's crying that I don't know how to stop, but please help me stop. So that is invoking the divine that please, I can't do it, right? Because I am ruled by it, but you come and you undo that thing. So all this appears to be the light that needs to be brought into the subconscious so that I can be actually free. Because right now I say I'm free and I might be free from, right? Like outside it might look that yes, free ही तो हैं, आजाद ही तो हैं, but ये जो अंदर की गुलामी चल रही है, that is what how it starts, like, and ends, like maybe more and more and more into it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Very well said. Yes. Yeah, anything more? Anyone? There is, on in Savitri we have this very nice, a couple of pages on the subliminal and the subconscient. Yeah, देखियो यहाँ से. Only a little of us foresees its steps. Only a little has will and purposed pace. A vast subliminal is man's measureless part. The dim subconscient is his cavern base. This is exactly what we were touching upon. And then he shares further, our past still lives still in our unconscious self. So things which we are not aware of, which we are not mindful of, which we are not conscious of. Our past lives still in our unconscious selves, and by the weight of its hidden influences is shaped our future's self-discovery. Thus, all is an inevitable chain, and yet a series seems of accidents. And then this beautiful line, the unremembering hours repeat the old acts. So whenever we are unmindful, we are not conscious, old patterns are repeated, and we are just a slave of them. There is no true freedom really. The unremembering hours repeat the old acts. Our dead past round our future's ankles clings and drags back the new nature's glorious stride. Or from its buried corpse, old ghosts arise, old thoughts, old longings, dead passions live again, recur in sleep, or move the waking man, to words that force the barrier of the lips, to deeds that suddenly start and overleap his head of reason and his guardian will. An old self lurks in the new self we are. Hardly we escape from what we once had been. In the dim gleam of habits, see again habits, in the dim gleam of habits passages, in the subconscious darkling corridors, all things are carried by the porter nerves. So we don't have to be conscious about it. ना कुछ आपने effort करना ही नहीं है, जो effortlessly हो रहा है वो patterns कर रहे हैं. So the nerves, the neurology has been set, neural plasticity is set. तो उस पुराने पैटर्न पे चलने के लिए आपको कोई एफर्ट नहीं चाहिए, वो तो बाय डिफॉल्ट होगा. एफर्ट जब चाहिए होता है जब हमको उसको स्टेप बैक करना है उससे. इफ वी आर यूज टू बी एंग्री ओवर certain issues, you know, being angry doesn't require any effort. Stepping back from anger, yes, requires effort. We are used to be jealous, doesn't require any effort. Stepping back from jealousy requires effort. So thinking about us as, lack of self-worth, unworthy, all these things don't require any effort. वो तो by default होना ही होना है. But when we want to stop all this bullshit, that we carry in our head, then we have to become conscious and stop it. So all things are carried by the porter nerves and nothing checked by the subterranean mind, unstudied. So again becomes, we come that how we are unconscious, unmindful, unstudied by the guardians of the doors, all the sensory input that we are taking. It is just going in and we are unaware of it. Unstudied by the guardians of the doors and passed by a blind instinctive memory कि ये तो मैं करता ही आ रहा हूँ, अरे ये तो मेरी आदत है, इससे कुछ नहीं होगा. So we allow that to happen. And passed by a blind instinctive memory, the old gang dismissed, old cancelled passports serve. Nothing is wholly dead that once had lived. In dim tunnels of the world's being and in ours, the old rejected nature still survives. That is why we need to be conscious. क्योंकि किसी भी समय अटैक हो सकता है, किसी भी समय. As long as we have breath in the body, we have to be vigilant and conscious. ये सोच के नहीं कि अच्छा अभी 2 साल से ऐसा कुछ नहीं हुआ तो अब वापस नहीं हो सकता ना. We can't be in that lack of vigilance. So this is all, that all that is hidden. The corpses of its slain thoughts raise their heads and visit mind's nocturnal walks in sleep. Its stifled impulses breathe and move and rise. All keeps a phantom immortality. The seeds of sins renounced sprout from hid soil. The evil cast from our hearts once more we face. Our dead selves come to slay our living soul. A portion of us lives in present time. A secret mass in dim inconscience gropes. Out of the inconscient and subliminal arisen. So this is what we were reading, that the subconscient body has arisen out of that subconscient. So out of the inconscient and subliminal arisen, we live in mind's uncertain light and strive to know and master a dubious world whose purpose and meaning are hidden from our sight. Now this is again the superconscient aspect of which we are not aware, which is above our waking consciousness. Above us dwells a superconscient God, hidden in the mystery of his own light. Around us is a vast of ignorance, lit by the uncertain ray of human mind. Below us sleeps the inconscient, dark and mute. And then of course, he takes us further and he says, this is not who we all are. We are much more and greater. Our greater self of knowledge waits for us. It sees from summits beyond thinking mind. It moves in a splendid air transcending life. It shall descend and make earth's life divine. So this is about the subliminal being here. Our larger being sits behind cryptic walls. There are greatnesses hidden in our unseen parts. So these impulses of generosity, compassion, self-giving, forgetting that you are a little person, just putting yourself into some service. People have, all the time we hear these stories, heroic stories. People jump into fire to save someone and they lose their own life, but that person is saved, something like that. So there are greatnesses hidden in our unseen parts that wait their hour to step into life's front. We feel an aid from deep indwelling gods. One speaks within, light comes to us from above. So its influence presses. This is what we were reading. The influence of the subliminal keep pressing from within. Its influence pressing on our heart and mind pushes them to exceed their mortal selves. है ना कि तू कर सकता है, बिल्कुल कर सकता है. So जब ऐसा impulse आती है कि हम छोटे नहीं हैं, चाहे जितने भी छोटा हम अपने आप को समझते हो, we can do a bigger deed that we think we are not capable of. Pushes them to exceed their mortal selves. It seeks for good and beauty and for God. So all this is soul consciousness coming forward. Seeking for good and beauty and for God. We see beyond self's walls our limitless self. We gaze through our world's grass at half-seen vasts. We hunt for truth behind apparent things. कि जब ऊपर ऊपर की बातों से, shallow life से हमारा मन भरना बंद हो जाता है, हमको लगता है इसके पीछे क्या है, और पीछे चाहिए, और पीछे चाहिए. So we hunt for the truth behind apparent things. Our inner mind dwells in a larger light. So all this is about that deep subliminal part in us which is hidden from our waking consciousness, but it's always pressing its influence. And then he says what it can do. It can make us mighty, it can make us wide, it can graft upon crawl two puissant wings. जहां हम क्रॉल कर रहे हैं लाइफ में, वो हमको उड़ने की शक्ति देता है. A mighty life selves with its inner powers. हमको उड़ने की शक्ति देता है. हम क्या कर रहे हैं, हम अभी क्रॉल करके सफिशिएंट है, हमको लगता है ठीक ही तो चल रहा है, but it gives us that power to fly in life. Yeah. So yeah, those of us interested can go through these lines, 3 pages, 483, 44 and 485, the parable of the search for the soul. Yeah, anything more here, anyone? So I think we should, I would like to stop here actually. This is good enough for a reflection or a contemplation. So this is page number 86 and 87 that we have done today. Subconscient and the subliminal, and how using its power of repetition we can actually master slowly and bring lots of change, good change in our life. Calling the higher influence, letting it descend into the being, and also changing at the level of the subconscious, the level of repetition. क्या रिपीट कर रहे हैं हम डेली लाइफ में, वही हमारी इलनेस का कॉज बन रहा है. तो अगर हम कुछ अच्छा रिपीट करेंगे तो इट कैन also change things. Okay, so we stop here then today, taking a moment of silence to dedicate, share all the merit, individual, collective, with innumerable sentient beings near, far. May all of us be able to recognize our greatnesses lying hidden within, and may we be able to transcend from our littlenesses. Thank you.